And okay, so right now with me I have Rob Paulsen on the other line, and I want to talk about his history as a voice actor and to see how his life has gone so far. So tell us, Rob, where did your passion for voice acting begin? Did it come from a certain type of movie, certain type of experience, moment per se, or where'd that come from?
As far as a passion, I think I've always had a passion for performing from the time I was fairly young, in my teens, I guess. I started out as a singer and was kind of enamored by music, and then I guess the natural extension of that is to just enjoy different dialects and folks who did cool things with their voices. And so like most kids, I loved cartoons, and when I was a youngster watching cartoons, it was things like the Flintstones and, all the Warner Brothers stuff, Bugs and Daffy and Tweety and Rocky and Bullwinkle. And, we didn't have all these outlets for animation that we have now. We had basically ABC, CBS, and NBC on Saturday morning and the occasional syndicated thing, and then, of course, these cartoon shorts before movies at the theater. So I didn't have a moment that said, oh, gosh, I want to be a voice actor, but I've always been a performer. And I've been doing it for money, I guess, since I've been about 19 or 20. So the voice part of it was something I was pretty interested in conjunction with just performing in general. When I was in high school and just out of high school, I became a huge fan of the Pythons, and I was always a big fan of Peter Sellers and Peter Ustinov and actors who could manipulate their voices, who happened to be on-camera actors as well. So my voice acting as an adult has sort of been an extension, or rather I should say a refinement of my interest in performing in general. And so I've kind of always been a fan of people who could manipulate their voices into dialects, and I have, I think, a pretty good ear, so I try to pick those things up and use them in my own work.
What was the most breakthrough moment for you when was it a big major project that came your way? Was it a little small project that kind of made you say, I made it?
Oh, well, that's a great question. As far as I made it, I don't know, I guess when I was able to realize that I could put braces on my kids' teeth and, make sure that my wife and I could eat every day and have cars and houses and stuff like normal people, I thought, well, that's making it. Everything else is kind of gravy. But as far as a big breakthrough, I didn't realize it at the time, but certainly in retrospect, I suppose the biggest breakthrough I had as a young actor was Ninja Turtles, because that was huge. At the time, none of us, Cam Clark, Barry Gordon, Townsend Coleman, and myself, I don't think any of us had an idea that it would be as big as it subsequently became. As a matter of fact, it didn't do very well the first time they aired. The first, I think it was 5 of them that were paid for by the toy company, Playmates Toys, and I think they aired around Christmas 1988 and didn't do particularly well, and then they re-aired them, and of course the rest is history. But I would have to say that was the biggest breakthrough for me, because as a result of that show, I started being invited to audition for a lot of other things, because I was on this sort of international hit show that became part of the culture. But the first show that I worked on as a voice actor, I think, was G.I. Joe in 1983, something like that. I don't remember. And I did a number of guest spots on shows like that, and Smurfs and odds and ends. But certainly Ninja Turtles was the biggest one that, and I suppose you could argue it's still the biggest one I've been involved in, but it was the one that kind of put me on the map here in Los Angeles and got me a lot of other work.
Has there been anyone in the voice acting field that you haven't worked with yet, but would like to, and sometime, someday, somewhere?
In the voice acting field, well, as you kind of alluded to, I've been pretty much fortunate enough, and I've been around long enough to work pretty much with everybody. I did get a chance to work with Mel Blanc, I think once or twice before he of course, was just a big thrill. And I've had the good fortune of working with Jonathan Winters and Gary Owens and a lot of folks who have already passed away, Bob Ridgely, Lenny Weinribs, and some of the really big. June Foray I've worked with many, many times, and she's, bless her heart, still moving along, and I think she's 90 now. Of course, she was Rocky and Natasha and many, many other things. There is a show I would love to work on, The Simpsons. As a matter of fact, I was just with Nancy Cartwright yesterday, who is Bart, and I've known Nancy for 25 years, and I love her to death. She's like a sister. And I've never had the good fortune of working on The Simpsons, so I would love to do that. But, I have to tell you, Daniel, I get to work on a practically daily basis with the finest voice actors in the world. And I can say that most of them are pretty close friends of mine. So I can't think of anybody right offhand that specifically with whom I'd like to work. There are actors with whom I'd like to work, and if it's in a voiceover context, that would be great. And that would be, I mentioned earlier, I love the Pythons. I'd love to find a way to work with John Cleese or Michael Palin. I did sort of work with Eric Idle, kind of by proxy, because Eric Idle played Pinky's mother and father on an episode of Pinky and the Brain. I was not able to be in the studio with him, but it was kind of cool that he was on the show since I'm such a big fan. I always wanted to work with Peter Sellers, but unfortunately he died many years ago, so that was one. But if I could find a way to work with John Cleese and or Michael Palin, that would be a huge thrill. And I've had a chance to meet many, many celebrities as a result of the shows I've worked on. And that's always been, by and large, a really, really great experience. They're lovely people, and it's fun. I get starstruck, too, when I get to hang out with these famous people, and it's a great aspect of my work.
I always forget to ask this question because other things come to mind, though, but was there ever a moment, a funny story that ever happened on one occasion, and it kind of remains like a memorable story to you?
I've had so many great things happen to me as a result of my work. Remember, I've been doing this now for 25 years, almost 25 years, and I've done, a couple thousand half hours, and I don't know how many characters. So when you're working with that many creative, wacky people, you're bound to have stories. And there have been many. I'm trying to think of any one particular one that comes to mind, but nothing specific. That a lot of it is also about context, and I could tell you stories, and listeners could hear the stories, but they probably wouldn't be as funny retelling them because the context is not quite the same, and a lot of it is inside humor and things that make sense to people who are out here. But I have had the good fortune. I mentioned Jonathan Winters. Of course, he's not only one of my heroes, but a hero to Robin Williams and Jim Carrey and a lot of other comics. And I remember the first time I worked with Jonathan Winters was on Smurfs back in probably 1988. And when we got done, I just took the time to mention that I'm a big fan. And to make a long story short, we ended up walking out to the parking lot together. He did 20 minutes for me in the parking lot, which was a huge thrill. And I called my folks and said, God, I'm just been spending the day with Jonathan Winters, and we're standing here in the parking lot, and he's doing his stand-up routine for me. And the same thing happened a couple of years ago at Nickelodeon. I was doing a pilot with Carl Reiner and Rose Marie from the Dick Van Dyke Show. And, of course, Maury Amsterdam's dead, and the only other person that was missing was Mary Tyler Moore. And I called my mom and dad and said, God, you're not going to believe this. I'm working with, Carl Reiner and Rose Marie, 50% of the cast of the Dick Van Dyke Show. How cool is this? So I've had many opportunities like such as those to work with people like that, and those are all these things that kind of crop up in my memories every now and then. But frankly, there are too many opportunities. I laugh my guts out every day at work, so it would be hard for me to pick one moment that's funnier than another.
I remember looking at your little profile there, saying it's like the day in the life of Rob Paulsen and picture by picture. So.
Oh yeah. So it's great. I mean, the people I work with are folks that you guys would love to be around. They're lovely people. There's no pretense, no attitude. Just really, really decent people who happen to have stupid amounts of talent. And when I'm in a room with Tress MacNeille or Maurice LaMarche or Corey Burton or Jess Harnell or Jim Cummings or Ava Winchell or Nancy Cartwright or Dan Castellaneta, Jeff Bennett, guys. It's really, truly frightening how much talent these people have, and I've gotten to work with them every day. So I am a very, very fortunate fellow.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is.
At one point, you were doing voicing for Steve Oldkirk and his Thumb movies.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the commentary and saying that, oh, that's Rob Paulsen. I'm like, oh, he did this and he did that. Oh. So that was kind of funny there, that all that Thumb stuff there.
Oh, yeah. No, it's great fun. And Steve's a wonderful guy. I'm working with him now on a show called After the Barnyard at Nickelodeon, which he's producing. And we're doing a new show at Nickelodeon that is a spin-off of Jimmy Neutron called Planet Sheen, which is based on the character Sheen, voiced by Jeff Garcia. He's a very funny fellow, great kid. And we're doing that now, which will probably be out, I guess, fall of next year, spring or fall, I don't know, summer, fall of next year. And I'll probably see Steve around Christmas because he always has a big Christmas party. But Steve is just another fantastic guy, incredibly talented. You know, writes great movies like Patch Adams and Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, and you know, he wrote Evan Almighty. I mean, the guy's just a really gifted writer and just another, just a really sweet guy. No pretense, no movie star bullshit. Just a great guy. And his producer Paul Marshall, another just lovely fellow, great people. It's like a big family. And the Thumb things came out of nowhere. Steve had this process that he and his folks had put together, as you know, where they digitally superimpose actors' faces on thumbs and then dress up the thumbs. And I thought, yeah, man, I'm on board for that. That's great. Let's go. So they have this device in which they'll sort of lock your head and you can't move around. And we did. I think I worked on 3 or 4 of them. I think I did Thumbtanic and Bat Thumb and
Thumb Wars.
Thumb Wars, right? Booby Dooby Dooby. Just great fun. And again, the whole process, the recording sessions are probably funnier than what you see on the screen, because the process by which we create this stuff is, you got to remember, it's chronologically we're a bunch of grown-ups, but inside we're all a bunch of 9-year-olds, and people laugh, and, somebody makes a fart noise and everybody else laughs. It's like, it's a bunch of goofballs, and we have a great time, and the wackier the better, and hopefully it translates to the screen. And the Thumb things, I think, were a lot more successful than Steve had anticipated. They had a huge audience with college kids and younger folks, and I suppose I had a couple of beers and watched it, and I can imagine it would be quite funny.
One thing I never got is that you have things like Bat Thumb and Franken Thumb and God Thumb. Like, how come you never thought about doing a James Bond spoof and call it Go Thumb?
Well, I don't know. That's a good one. I'll mention it to Steve. I don't know. I don't do them. I don't write them. I just act in them. So I'm not involved with producing them, except that I'm a performer. I don't write, produce, cast any of the stuff I work on. I've tinkered with the idea of coming up with my own shows and ideas, and I would love to do that, but I'm just really not good at it, Daniel. I think I've got too many other interests, and I'm lucky enough to work a lot. And when I'm not working, I like cars and motorcycles and golf and stuff like that. So other people like Steve. Steve is Odenkirk is a multi-thread. He can write, he can produce, he can direct, he can act. He's a pretty talented guy, but I'm just an actor and a singer. So, Gold Thumb is a great idea too. There are lots of great ideas. There are virtually any action adventure. You can do anything, love stories, anything with the thumbs, because it's just so goofy. And I'm sure that they'll come up with some other stuff down the road.
Well, it makes kind of sense, Goldfinger, Gold Thumb, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
So now comes probably your biggest moment, and that'd be Animaniacs. And I was going back and looking at a couple of things there, and it does kind of, I don't know how you say it, at points it does kind of, it's a lot more than what you expect. There was one episode that kind of, I was surprised at, where it was this whole thing about the devil, and they were throwing every name of the devil. But the thing was that it opened up with this little 10-second thing, and it was a whole thing about Saddam Hussein, and it was Iraq. You it was him, and then it was. I couldn't believe that when I saw that.
Well, remember that was just after the Gulf War, because the Gulf War was in 1991, so Animaniacs came along in 92, and then we started recording those in March of 1992, and they weren't on the air till fall of 93. So anything was, there were a lot of topical events that Animaniacs parodied. I kind of remember that. I mean, we did so many. I've worked on so many shows. I remember some of that. We did the same thing with different political figures and different historical figures, and they would lampoon a lot of that stuff. So, a guy like Saddam Hussein is by all accounts, or was by all accounts, a pretty nasty fellow, and you don't have too much in the 40s and 50s, you would get cartoons that would lampoon people like Hitler and Mussolini. And so when you have other despots around the world that are well known, it's pretty much not off limits for cartoons and other comedy shows to go after them. I mean, people go after George Bush all the time when you're president. If you're president of the United States, or if you're a despot like Saddam Hussein or Hitler or any of those other guys, you're pretty much fair game for anybody that wants to lampoon you. And again, as I said, that was still fresh in everybody's mind because we had just had a war in 1991 to get him the hell out of Kuwait. So it was not an unusual thing for people to go after. It may have been unusual to the extent that it was, in fact, quote, kid show, unquote. But that's one of the things that made Animaniacs so special, because it was like in the tradition of the other Warner Brothers things that came before it, and they were written on different levels to appeal to kids and also to appeal to adults, and that was not by accident. Those were all very very smart people who wrote that stuff.
I always thought that was kind of like the easiest way you can get by with stuff like that. If you call it a kid show and just sneak a bunch of that stuff in there, it's like the easiest way to get through. It's like, it's a kid, but let's wait until they actually see what they see. But
well, yeah, I mean, there's still people at standards and practices that thumbs up or thumbs down on things in script form all the time. There are many things that we'll get to, we get to recording session and try things, and it won't end up in the show because the standards and practices deem it not appropriate, or that it's maybe something that will engender a lawsuit, and we certainly don't want that. But Animaniacs was a pretty hip show, and I think that a lot of those stand up. I don't see them all the time, but now it's been some of those, if they started airing in '93, we're looking at 15 years later, and I think some of them hold up pretty well. I think it was a show that even though it was dealing with topical issues, the issues were well enough known that people could remember them and watch them. Like, you are much younger than I am, I'm sure. You could watch it and still appreciate it for what it is, and you might even be able to watch things that you saw as a child. You're 10, 12, 15 years old, and all of a sudden you watch them when you're 30 years old, 28, 30 years old. You go, oh man, now I get that part. That's pretty clever. And that's great. I love that. I love that those shows are able to be viewed by people at different ages. And sometimes you watch them, the same show, as I said, and you get older and you get a completely different spin on it and skew it. You think, wow, that was pretty sharp.
I remember when you were doing the Nations of the World. That's pretty insightful. And I remember too that my sister was talking about how I think you learned a lot more from Animaniacs because you were able to learn about all the states through Ceylon and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's clever, and a lot of kids. I do personal appearances around every so often, and I run into a lot of folks who say, I learned the states and the capitals. That song was sung by Jess Harnell, but the same thing with the countries, and we did a number of different things that were educational in nature, but they weren't presented that way, and I think that's a wonderful way to get kids to learn. And when I was a kid, not a kid, but in high school, they had, Sesame Street was really big when I think was in high school, probably 10th, 11th, 12th grade, just coming along, and they used to have lots of music there that was done by Jack Sheldon, who's a very famous band leader and trumpet player, and he did a thing called Conjunction Junction. It was all about what a conjunction is and how you take a word like can and not and turn it into can't, and was very clever about how conjunctions are formed. And I think the people that did Animaniacs and the music, certainly Mr. we're very cognizant of the power of music and entertainment in not only being entertaining, but helping kids to learn. And as far as I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's fantastic. As a matter of fact, we won not only a bunch of Emmys, but we won a Peabody Award on Animaniacs, which is a very significant, very prestigious award from the University of Georgia, I think, for excellence in journalism. And so to get an award that is a fairly significant journalistic award for what is essentially a kids show is a pretty cool thing, and I'm very proud of that. And to this day, as I said, when I see folks who got a lot out of Animaniacs, these are the songs that had to do with the presidents or the bones in the body or the states and the capitals, and I think that's great. I'm really proud of that. It's pretty cool. It's great fun to do.
Yeah, well, once you win the award, I think that says it all.
Yeah.
So, out of all the characters you played on Animaniacs, who was your favorite and why?
Animaniacs, well, the only ones, I know I did a bunch of secondary characters, but we did 100 of those episodes, and I certainly, Yakko was great, and then I also played Dr. Scratch and Sniff, and then I played Pinky, who, of course, went out to have a spin-off show, but so if you're taking Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain together, it's a hackneyed expression, but it's kind of like deciding which child you like the most. And I've been really, really fortunate to do so many fun things, and I've had so many nice people that allowed me to do them. I think probably Pinky, because it's a very dear character, and the relationship between Pinky and the Brain was always really interesting and sweet, and I don't think it didn't get old and frayed. People seem to like watching it still. And I won an Emmy for Pinky, so that was a big deal for me and my family. And anytime you win an Emmy award, it's a pretty significant deal for an actor, especially a non-celebrity actor like me. So I have to say Pinky, but Yakko's terrific too, and Yakko got to sing the Countries of the World songs, and Yakko was the smart-ass character, and I got to tell these really cool lines, but Pinky did too. So I would have to say, if somebody said I had to make a choice, I'd say probably Pinky. But then, we did a couple of great songs in which Dr. Scratch and Sniff got to sing, and I thought it was hysterical. The context of the songs and the way Scratch and Sniff was portrayed, I thought was very clever and very funny. But I would say, probably Pinky. And when I go around and meet people, and I love, getting a chance to meet folks, because what I do is pretty anonymous, and when you get a chance to actually go and meet folks who've been nice enough to watch your things over the years, I'd have to say most people seem to get a kick out of Pinky.
Let's see. Well, what were you doing around the time when we were just going into the new millennium now? What were your thoughts about, anything? Well, like where would the media, or where would anything go toward to now that we're entering the new century of 2000?
I don't remember. That was 8 years ago. When I was thinking, I don't know. I guess I was probably a little bit leery of all these knuckleheads that said the world's going to come to an end because the computers are going to explode and everything's not going to work. And that was kind of goofy. But there are not everybody. A lot of people don't get to be alive at the turn of the century. That was a pretty significant thing for everybody. But I don't know that I had any views on anything that was earth-shattering. I was just having a conversation with my wife today about the new media that's becoming pretty ubiquitous around for all of us. I don't think it'll be too long before people won't be paying too much attention to their TVs. It's going to be watching stuff on your PDAs and your iPods and your phones and your laptops. And so there's a whole new movement afoot to make sure that all actors and writers and directors are compensated fairly for things that are coming down the pike from new media. But I have to say, I'm sorry, Daniel, I don't have anything specific that I recall that was profound or earth-shattering in 2000. It was just like, wow, this is cool. It's going to be year 2000. How cool was that, and we won't be around to see the next one. So enjoy the millennium change, because most people weren't around. They're living now weren't around from 1900 to from 1899 to 1900, and most of us aren't going to be around to see 2099 to 2100. So that was kind of cool, but not much else apart from that.
Let's see, around 2000, well, around the 2000s, you got a voice position for director's video sequel called Balto 2.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked with the director of that, Phil Weinstein, already, and I just want to see if you have any take on that, and if you have anything to talk about that.
Is that where I played the mouse, that singing mouse?
I think it was the mouse, or it was one of the wolves.
Yeah, it could have been. And the only reason I say that is that I know that I got hired to sing. I think it was Peter McNichol, great actor, who is right now I think is on Numbers, and on the TV show Numbers on CBS. And I've worked with Peter on a couple of things. He's a terrific guy and a very, very good actor. And if I'm not mistaken, he did this character. I don't remember the name of the mouse, but I was hired to sing for the mouse, and because I do a lot of singing. I'm not sure that I replaced Peter specifically throughout the whole show. I think I just did the singing on that. And I may have played a wolf too. Forgive me if I seem a little vague, but again, you said that was 2000.
I think that was around 2002. I think it was.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a number of years ago, and you have to remember that between then and now, I've done hundreds of other things.
That's understandable.
And that was a one-shot deal. I might have gone in for a couple of days and worked on that project, but since then I've done hundreds of episodes of other things, and it wasn't something that took a large part of it. It may have ended up to be a nice piece, and I'm certainly glad to have worked on it. And I'm glad that it warranted a question from you, which means that you thought it was significant enough to talk about. I appreciate that. But since it wasn't something that that I worked on for several months or a year, then I don't have a great memory of specifically what I did on it. Or I don't even know that I've seen it. And that's not to say that it's not worth seeing, but when you do so much stuff, I like yesterday I watched an episode of Cat Scratch. I happened to have the TV on it, which I thought was a great show, and I clicked on it and go, wow, that's terrific. I hardly remembered recording that, and that was probably 2 years ago. So when you're lucky enough to work a lot, you can't always see or remember everything. But like Ninja Turtles, I've done, 200 episodes of Ninja Turtles, and my kid knows it way better than I do, because he's seen, I think, most of them, but I haven't.
Let's see. From what I read, you do take a lot of time out to help kids and for motivational speaking, and how does that fit into your schedule along with your voice acting at the same time?
Well, I'd like to do more. I'm not doing as much of it as I'd like to. I think primarily because I'm not the flavor of the month right now, and by that, and that's not I think it's just the nature of show business. I knew when I was working on shows that were really, really hot, and like Ninja Turtles and Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, that for those periods of time I was doing a lot of charity things because I'd be invited to them. And right now Tom Kenny's having his moment because of SpongeBob, and he's just a fantastic guy. His wife Jill do a lot of things for kids, and we all do. Nancy, yesterday I was at a function for kids in the San Fernando Valley, underprivileged kids here in the San Fernando Valley, and Nancy Cartwright, put it together. So she was there, I was there, and Candy Milo, and Gray Delisle, and E.G. Daly, and Tara Strong. Really great bunch of actors, and we were there signing autographs for kids. And it was great fun. But it fits in fine because I as far as I'm concerned, I can't not do it. I would love to do more. And I was very cognizant when I was doing Ninja Turtles, and I was at the children's hospitals a lot, that I would do it while I had the power of the turtles, so to speak, and that is to say that I knew that they wouldn't last forever, and that there would be some other guy coming along or some other girl coming along that would be really much more interesting to people as far as getting a crowd or being able to bring them in to talk to the sick kids, and that's fine. Everybody wants to talk to SpongeBob now, and so Tom, of course, being the sweet man that he is on the phone all the time talking to kids and going to hospitals, and I did that for many years with Turtles and Pinky and Yakko, and to a large extent Carl from Jimmy Neutron. And I do as much of it as I can, but hopefully there will be another show that comes along, and I'm all of a sudden hot again, and they'll say, we really got to get Rob because he's doing a character that every kid wants to talk to. I live for that stuff. I really, really love it. So it's not like it takes too much time away from me or my family, because I've been very fortunate. Not only do I have a great job and I'm able to work at something that I love to do, but I have a healthy child and a lovely wife and people that are relatively healthy. So if I do something that interests people to the extent that they want me to come, and it will help children feel better or inspire them to do other things in their life and keep them away from gangs and drugs and all of that, because I can be inspirational and give them my story, then certainly there's no time that I wouldn't do it, because I feel that is an obligation that I have, having been so fortunate in my life. But you have to also understand that not everybody wants you all the time to come and speak, because they want to get the guy who's the latest guy to come and speak, and that's okay. It's fine. But you can also still do things like this. I get to talk to you, and I get to sign autographs like I did yesterday for a couple of hours, and talk to children, and hopefully give them, put a smile on their face. But throughout your career, you have these opportunities to do things on a specific basis. You never know who you might run into that actually, you might say something or be of particular interest or inspiration to a person at a time in their lives when they really need some help. And you never know. There may have been a time when I did something or said something that might have changed a child's attitude, and he was going through a difficult time at school or with his parents or a divorce or a health issue. So I'm very cognizant of that, and I hope that I've been able to help folks. And the bottom line is I hope that I've been able to make them smile and entertain them, because that's what this is all about after all.
Next question is about where all the stands. Well, actually, all the stands. When it comes to like voiceovering for things like animation per se, a lot of people tend to think that it's something for kids, though. But that kind of gets me a little bit aggravated, because if people would look a little bit more deeper, then they would kind of see it more on the level of like a Picasso piece or something like that, though. But from your take, where does things like Animaniacs and things like that, where does that stand and in the whole range of society or history or whatever?
Are you talking about what do I feel their position is with respect to sort of popular culture and art, so to speak?
Yeah, like what the place for them is for, and what is their meaning for actually being there?
Well, first and foremost, when you got the pieces produced by a large company like Warner Brothers, the bottom line is for them to make money. That's people sometimes don't like to hear that, but this is capitalism. That's the idea, is to get viewers and get advertising dollars. And if you're Ninja Turtles, then sometimes you can arguably become arguably become a half-hour commercial to sell action figures. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes folks say, geez, they just sell toys. Well, yeah, that's what they're designed to do, and that's what. If you can entertain and make people money, then that's fine. With respect to their position in sort of the greater picture in terms of their longevity or their iconic value with respect to pop culture or their artistic merit, I've done things that I think are worthy of long-term viewership, like certain Animaniacs episodes or Pinky and the Brain. I think you'll be able to look back at things that I've worked on and that we've all worked on and view them in the context that they were made, and they'll sort of give you some idea about what was going on in the culture at the time. Will they be around in 100 years and like a fine piece of music? Will people 200 years from now say, wow, I watched this thing from the early 1990s that was called Animaniacs, and it is spectacular. When you look at it in the context of the world, these guys were great. I don't know. I won't be around. There are great pieces of music that were written several hundred years ago that are still fabulous pieces of music, and they're being interpreted by the artists of today, and Yo-Yo Ma might play a piece that was done, that was written 400 years ago by Mozart, and his spin on it is brilliant, but the piece itself is brilliant. So if I look at it, without getting too deep, if I look at it something like the Countries of the World song, it's a brilliant song. It is a beautifully constructed, beautifully crafted, fantastic piece of music. And I don't think anybody would look at it either now. Whenever I go sing in front of 2,000 people now, people freak out. And if it were to be done, 100 years from now, people would go, wow, what a great song. I think all of it has worth because it entertains people. And I'm an entertainer, so I want to, that's my job, is to make people smile. And obviously I've done something that is interesting enough for you and your listeners that you want to talk to me. And I'm sure you've talked to other actors and producers and directors, and I'm sure you'd like to talk to Nancy Cartwright, and you'd like to talk to Tress MacNeille, and you'd like to, if there was some way you could talk to Jay Ward and Paul Frees and Mel Blanc, you would do that too. So we all have a part in doing things that hopefully are of worth. But still in all, as they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's a subjective medium. I don't think there are too many people who would watch Animaniacs and say, if they watched 50 episodes of Animaniacs, they would say, this is pretty good. You may not fall all over yourself, but it's pretty good. So is The Simpsons. So is Rocky and Bullwinkle. But I won't be around in 50 years. I may be, but I'd probably be drooling on myself and wearing a diaper. But I won't be around in a long time when people can say, wow, this guy with Rob Paulsen was really good, and the shows were really good, and The Simpsons was really great and interesting and all of that. And every now and then I'll have somebody in a personal appearance say, wow, Mr. Paulsen, I'm a big fan, and I have to tell you, you're kind of like the Mel Blanc of your generation. And that's very flattering, and I certainly accept the compliment in the spirit in which it was given. But, talk to me in 50 years and people are still quoting Pinky or Yakko or some of the things I've done like they do with Mel Blanc. Bugs Bunny is a pretty amazing character, and all of the characters that Mel Blanc did were pretty stunning, and people still wear Bugs, Daffy, Tweety T-shirts now. And it's been, many, many years since those characters were created. Mickey Mouse is 80 years old. So I've not been around long enough, and the work that I've done hasn't really stood the test of time. Do I think it will? I think some of it will, yeah. But I don't know that, it would be pretty presumptuous of me to say that 100 years from now people are going to be loving Animaniacs. Who knows if they'll even remember it. I would like to think so, but, maybe you could channel me in 100 years and ask me then.
I'll try and do that.
Okay, fair enough. I'll see if I'm around. I'll keep an ear open for you on the other side.
All right. So I think right now will probably be the last question.
Okay.
And this was a question I asked on my last interviewee. And so here it is. Nowadays, with the way that everything is now, especially in the media, with music and TV and movies and all that, it seems nowadays that it's more about escape than it is, more than it was years before than it was inspiration. Because I remember looking back on the things that I grew up on, and it's really a boost of motivation. And nowadays, it seems like the stuff that's made now really doesn't have the flair to make people active and want to go out and do things or follow their dreams or inspirations.
What was it that you watched that was inspirational to you as a youngster? Things were made from Don Bluth. A lot of the animation movies and shows. I mean, even if they weren't purposely trying to give you a message, still they were still fun enough to make you want to go out and do things. But right, and I hear what you're saying, and so your question is, why do I think that is, or do I think that's going to change, or do I agree with you? Is that what you're basically getting at?
Well, do you think nowadays it's kind of like going through a mood swing, and it'll come back again. And
I see what you're saying. Well, I think part of it might be a function of your age. How old are you now?
I'm 20.
Okay, so you're still pretty young. But I think it's also important to remember, my son is just a little older than you are, and things, when he was growing up, things that were really inspiring to him were like Ninja Turtles, because, they still were always about fighting the good fight. Mega Man, superheroes that he really got into were Batman and things like that. And now he's, a young adult, and you're basically the same age. And I think sometimes, Daniel, is the context or the perspective that you have when you view these things. Jaded is probably not the right word. I don't mean to say that you become a little jaded, but things become a little more real, and the truth of how the world works starts to become a little more apparent to one as one gets older. Now, there are, I think the shows that are more popular right now don't appear to be the inspirational type, superhero type shows, right? Now my kid loved Lion King, and the story and the good and evil struggle in Lion King was very apparent. Same with Hercules or other movies like that. And you mentioned Don Bluth. I guess you're probably talking about Fievel and American Tail and stuff like that. And now the things are more stuff like Madagascar, Cars, what was the other one recently? Kung Fu Panda. You're right. They're pretty much escapist entertainment. And I don't know that it's specific to what's going on in the world, but things really suck right now. That doesn't mean that you should give up, because everybody should fight the good fight and expect it to get better, and it will. It'll get better. What's happening in the market, what's happening in the world, people are very inspired by the election of Mr. Obama. There are a lot of things going on that will hopefully turn the tide, but when things were really bad many years ago, during the First World War, the Second World War, and the Depression, things at other times in things that, I'm old enough to certainly be your father and almost your grandfather. Certainly things that are going on now are not too dissimilar to what people have suffered through in the past, and some of the best entertainment that was inspirational, and quite often just the fact that it's entertaining, just the fact that it gets you out of whatever it is that's going on in your life that's so difficult, whether it's losing your home to foreclosure or losing your job. Sometimes just that inspires people to just live another day, just to sort of get on with life and try to look for the good in life. I suppose that, if there don't seem to be so many superhero things coming on. I think Nickelodeon's going to be doing X-Men and Wolverine and stuff like that, and I believe that there's another, I auditioned for something the other day that was more Marvel superhero type stuff, and I did a show called Biker Mice from Mars. I think it's running on Fox or something now, but that used to be on syndication years ago. But the big rock'em sock'em superhero shows don't seem to be as popular right now as the purely entertaining shows. And I think you're right. I think it will probably come around. I don't know why that is, but I do know that people always need to be entertained, and particularly when things are very difficult all around the world, they need to be entertained. But also, it's a real soundbite culture. People don't spend as much time reading. There are plenty of inspirational things not only to watch, but to read. My God, some of the classic books of all time are very, incredibly inspirational. And you don't need to turn on the TV. You need to sit down and read. But people don't like to do that, particularly folks your age and my son's age. And that's not a criticism. You were raised in an instantaneous soundbite culture. You're used to. My son already gets really tired of things that he's a video game junkie and an expert video gamer. My son is not only a fantastic player, but he's a brilliant writer. And he just got his degree in journalism. He's an incredibly gifted writer and also a reviewer. Because like you, he's grown up playing video games. But the stuff that I watch on the screen and from a video game, I watch and go, my God, that's incredible. And he says, yeah, whatever. Been there, done that. And so for you guys to be inspired, either visually or spiritually, it takes quite a bit. stuff thrown at you. And you might find something that is the simpler the better. My son is looking forward to the next time when he sees a Disney cartoon that's done in 2D. You know, he wants to see a really nice two-dimensional cartoon like Lion King again. He's kind of getting tired of the 3D, you know, wham bam, you know, visual feast for the eyes kind of stuff. He longs for something a little more simpler. He loves watching Ninja Turtles from the original ones. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know I'm rambling, but it's a pretty deep question that you asked me, and I think there's a lot of stuff. There are many ways to look at it, but ultimately the inspiration will come, I think, from yourself, and you might find that it's something that you relied on in the past. It might be that you've got, you know, videos of things that inspired you in the past, and as you get older, you might go back to those and find that they'll continue to inspire you. And hopefully there'll be new stuff coming along, but if not, I would say, you know, find what works for you and go watch it again.
Well, that was a nice answer there. Well, almost stuck for words, but well,
Okay.
well.
I hope I didn't give you a too long-winded answer, but it's a pretty deep question that you asked me.
Well, I think this interview kind of is a part of that because the fan base kind of things doesn't really seem that inspirational in itself. So I think if you kind of dig deep into the thing that you like the most and kind of bring it out there, if it's an interview with someone, then it'll kind of bring back a little hint of, oh wait, it'll get me to go out and do something else.
Right.
Because
hopefully I can, you know, I love being inspiring to people because I'm a good example. I'm a kid that grew up in Flint, Michigan, and you know, that Flint, Michigan might as well be on Mars compared to Hollywood. And I talk to people about this all the time. It's if you have a passion, and that in my case it was entertaining, but I don't care if you like to write, if you like to sing, if you like to do body work on cars, if you like to be a gardener, if you like to do landscaping, if you like to do, you know, woodwork. Find what it is that inspires you and you know, go for it. And if you're able to exploit your passion, I was one of the lucky ones that found what I was passionate about at a young age, Daniel. Not everybody's that fortunate. But when you do, when you're able to find what it is that you know, makes you want to get up in the morning, you cannot wait to start it again, then exploit it and go for it. And you know, if you're truly blessed when you can find something you like and something you're good at, and they turn out to be the same thing. And if you then ultimately can find something you like, something you're good at, and then people will pay you for it, then you're just living a dream. And it doesn't even have to be a lot of money. If you find that every day that you're able to take care of yourself and your family and the things that you want to do, and you make enough money doing something that you would do for free, my goodness, what else can you ask out of life, you know? So I'm a good example of that. I get paid every day to do what used to get me in trouble in 7th grade. And so if I can talk to nice people like you and your listeners, and somebody derives any sort of inspiration out of that, then I'm grateful, because it is a lovely thing when you can get to be my age and you still cannot wait to go to work every day. It really truly is. It's a great thing. And it's been a hell of a ride. I've really had a great career, and I hope it's not over yet, because I still like working, and I have to work. But I'm telling you, when you get to be my age, to be able to get up every day and go to work with people you would choose as your friends, and then you get to go home at night and be as satisfied that you've entertained people and hopefully made them laugh and think, and then they give you a check. You know, there aren't too many people that are more fortunate than I am, and I'm very cognizant of it, and I want people to know that I realize how lucky I am, and I appreciate people like you and your listeners having watched my work for so long, and taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for talking to me.
And if you've been wondering why I asked that question, it's because, you know, it's a new century, and there's new challenges waiting, and, you know, we need all the insight we can get.
Well, it's my pleasure. pleasure, my friend. I'm glad that you asked. I hope your viewers or your listeners get a kick out of it. And you asked some very poignant questions and had some very cogent thoughts. And you're a very bright young fellow, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And good luck in your life. And I hope that the interview